The air was thick with the scent of honeysuckle and asphalt as Emily Harper stepped off the Greyhound bus. Her worn sneakers kicking up dust from the cracked pavement of a Raleigh, North Carolina, bus stop. The summer humidity clung to her like a second skin. Her t-shirt damp against her back. She was 28, with dark hair pulled into a messy bun, her hazel eyes scanning the familiar yet distant street that led to her family's sprawling estate. The distant hum of cicadas mixed with the faint clink of glasses and laughter spilling from the house ahead. A party, of course. Her mother, Margaret, never missed a chance to play the perfect hostess. Emily tightened her grip on her duffel bag, the weight of it grounding her. She hadn't come for the party. She'd come for her grandfather, William. The Harper estate loomed at the end of the oak-lined drive, its white columns gleaming under the evening sun like something out of a Southern Gothic novel. Emily's heart thudded as she approached, the chatter growing louder, the strings of a violin quartet slicing through the air. She pushed open the heavy front door, and the scene hit her like a wave. Men in tailored blazers, women in cocktail dresses, their voices a polished hum over the clatter of silverware. The foyer smelled of roasted pork and expensive perfume, a combination that made her stomach turn. Her jeans and faded tee felt like a betrayal of the room's elegance. Emily, sweetheart. Margaret's voice cut through the noise, sharp and syrupy, her smile as curated as the flower arrangements on the mahogany table. At 52, Margaret Harper was a vision in a sapphire dress, her blonde hair swept into an impeccable chignon. I thought you weren't coming until tomorrow. The words were warm, but her eyes said something else. You're late. You're inconvenient. Emily forced a tight nod, her jaw clenching. I came to see Grandpa. Margaret's smile didn't waver, but her gaze flickered. Just for a second. He's resting. Dear, why don't you grab a drink and join us? The guests are dying to meet you. Something in her tone, a practiced dismissal, set Emily's nerves on edge. She didn't respond, just hoisted her bag and moved past the crowd, their curious glances trailing her like whispers. The dining room was a sea of unfamiliar faces, neighbors and socialites sipping wine, their laughter too bright for the knot forming in her chest. She turned down the back hallway, the music fading, replaced by a faint, irregular sound, like someone gasping for air. She pushed open the door to William's room. The air was stale, heavy with the scent of liniment and old books. There he was, crumpled on the floor by the bed, his thin frame half hidden in the shadows. One slipper dangled from his foot, the other bare. His chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven bursts, his lips tinged blue. At 87, William Harper was a shadow of the man who'd taught her to fish in the creek behind the house. But his eyes, glassy yet open, locked onto hers. Grandpa. Emily dropped her bag, knees hitting the hardwood as she knelt beside him. Can you hear me? His lips twitched, but no sound came. Her hands fumbled for her phone, fingers trembling as she unlocked it and dialed 911. Her thumb hovered over the call button when the door slammed open behind her. What the hell do you think you're doing? Margaret's voice was a hiss, her heels clicking like gunfire. She snatched the phone from Emily's hand, her manicured nails glinting. He needs an ambulance. Emily's voice shook, but her resolve didn't. He's barely breathing. Lower your voice, Margaret snapped, glancing toward the hallway. There are 40 guests out there eating shrimp cocktails. You want to ruin everything? Ruin? Emily's eyes darted to William, his chest stuttering. He could die. Mom. Margaret's lips tightened into a thin line. We'll call Dr. Peterson after the party. He knows how to handle your grandfather's episodes. Episodes? Emily's voice rose, incredulous. If this was an act, William deserved an Oscar and a eulogy. She stood, ready to push past her mother. But Margaret blocked the door, her face a mask of controlled fury. Emily didn't argue. She couldn't. Instead, she turned, grabbed her phone back, and slipped out through the dining room, past the trays of hors d'oeuvres and the sea of wine-sipping strangers. She ducked out the back patio door, hiding in the shadow of a wisteria trellis. Her fingers moved fast, dialing 911 again. I need an ambulance, she said, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. My grandfather's collapsed. He's struggling to breathe. 1427 Magnolia Lane. Hurry. Back in William's room, she knelt beside him again, her hand gentle on his arm. Help's coming, Grandpa, she whispered, leaning close. Just hold on. His fingers twitched. A faint motion, but enough to tell her he heard. 15 minutes later, the EMTs burst through the hallway, their boots thudding against the polished floors. The violin screeched to a halt, and a guest peeked out, wine glass in hand, murmuring, "Is everything okay?" Margaret stood at the base of the stairs, her smile brittle as porcelain. "Just a little spell," she said, waving a hand. "You know how the elderly are." William was strapped to a stretcher, an oxygen mask over his face, his eyes half closed. An EMT turned to Emily. "You called this in?" "Yes," she said, meeting his gaze. Margaret's glare burned into her, but Emily didn't flinch. Outside, under the porch light, Margaret cornered her. "You humiliated us," she hissed, her voice low but venomous. "Do you know what this looks like?" "I saved his life," Emily shot back, her voice quieter but no less firm. "It was a dizzy spell," Margaret said, dismissing her. "Your grandfather always did love attention. Now we have guests to entertain. And you've turned our evening into a circus." Emily didn't respond. There was no point. Margaret wasn't angry about William's condition. She was angry that her carefully curated night had been disrupted. Emily turned and walked away, her steps deliberate, her heart pounding. That night, in the guest room, her old bedroom, now stripped of anything personal, she sat on the edge of the bed, the crisp sheets untouched. The ceiling fan creaked above her, counting seconds in the dark. She replayed the moment in William's room, his shallow breaths, Margaret's cold dismissal, the weight of a family that valued appearances over a man's life. Her phone sat silent, no texts, no calls, not even a check-in from her sister, Lauren, or her father, Thomas. She opened Instagram, a reflex she regretted instantly. Margaret's latest post stared back at her. A photo of her and Lauren at the dining table. Wine glasses raised, smiles wide. The caption read, "A beautiful evening celebrating William's legacy. #family first #blessed." Emily's grip tightened until her knuckles ached. She scrolled to Lauren's story, her arm linked with Thomas's, both laughing in front of a photo collage of William, curated by Margaret. Then, a video from a family friend, filmed discreetly near the bar. Margaret's voice, clear and cutting. "Emily's back. Thank God she looks heartbroken. Saves us the trouble of hiring someone to play the grieving granddaughter." Laughter followed, Thomas's voice among it. Emily played the clip twice, each word a blade. It wasn't just betrayal, it was erasure. Deliberate and calculated. She saved the video, emailed it to herself, not for revenge but to anchor herself in the truth. She wasn't imagining this. Hours later, at Mission Hospital, the doctor's words were gentle but final. William had passed at 11:32 p.m. Emily signed the release papers, her hand steady despite the ache in her chest. She was alone in the ICU, the only one there to hold his hand as he slipped away. Outside, the night was heavy with crickets and silence. She sat on a bench by the hospital's fountain, clutching a manila folder with William's death certificate. His life reduced to 2 dates and a hyphen. No mention of the times he'd slipped her $20 for books or listened to her sob about high school heartbreaks. Her phone stayed silent. No messages from her family. No acknowledgement of her text to the group chat. Grandpa passed. ICU. I signed the papers. Just read notifications. Cold and final. Back at the estate, the house glowed like a stage set. Every window lit. Every surface polished. Emily slipped inside, avoiding the creaky floorboards. The living room was pristine, chairs straightened, glasses cleared, as if nothing had happened. Upstairs, she placed the death certificate on the dresser and lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The silence wasn't comforting. It was demanding, forcing her to face the truth. Her family hadn't just forgotten William. They were trying to forget her. The air in the Harper estate was heavy with the kind of silence that follows a storm. The kind that dares you to break it. Emily Harper, now 28, sat on the floor of her grandfather William's study, surrounded by a fortress of papers, prescriptions, medical invoices, appointment logs, all meticulously kept in an old accordion folder she'd found tucked behind his desk. The room smelled faintly of lemon polish and the lingering ghost of William's cedarwood cologne. It was past midnight, August 10, 2025, and the house was still, save for the occasional creak of the floorboards settling under the weight of its own secrets. Emily's eyes burned from hours of reading. Her fingers smudged with ink from highlighting discrepancies. A heart medication refill marked, cancelled by family. A checkup William never missed suddenly scratched off the schedule. Each document was a thread in a tapestry of neglect, woven by her mother, Margaret, and sister, Lauren. But it was the micro SD card, pulled from William's digital photo frame, that had set her heart racing. The video it held, a 90-second clip timestamped 9 days before his death, showed Margaret stepping into William's room. Her face impassive as she turned down the oxygen knob with a single, deliberate click. William's frail voice, barely audible, whispered, "M. before she walked out, sipping his water glass like nothing had happened. Emily's hands shook, not with fear but with a clarity that cut through the fog of grief. This wasn't an accident, it was a choice. She copied the video to a secure folder, backed it up to a cloud drive labeled, William's Truth, and slipped the SD card into her pocket. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for the man who'd slipped her $20 for books. Who'd listened when no one else did. By sunrise, Emily was on the phone with a legal clinic in downtown Raleigh. Her voice was steady as she explained the situation. The falsified will, the video, the years of isolation. The lawyer, a woman named Clara with a no-nonsense tone, promised to connect her with someone who could help. That someone was James Merrick, a 62-year-old attorney with white hair and a reputation for taking on cases that others wouldn't touch. Emily met him at his modest office, tucked between a florist and a shuttered bakery on Fayetteville Street. The sign on his door, gold lettering on glass, read simply, Merrick and Associates. "I was wondering how long it'd take you," James said, his eyes kind but heavy with knowing. He didn't waste time with pleasantries, leading her to a heavy wooden desk that reminded her of William's. "He gave me something a year ago," James said, unlocking a cabinet. "Told me to hold it until you came asking." He placed a thin file on the desk, tied with a yellowed ribbon. "This changes everything." Emily's fingers hesitated before untying the ribbon. Inside was a notarized will, dated 6 weeks before William's death, bearing his unmistakable signature, wobbly on the W, heavy on the H. It named her, Emily Harper, as the recipient of the garden estate, his private journals, and the southern parcel of land. A handwritten note, on William's monogrammed stationery, was tucked beside it. "She is the one who remembered me while I was alive. Not in grief, not in hindsight, but in presence. She showed up." W. Her breath caught. Presence. That word anchored her, a second heartbeat in her chest. "Will it hold up?" she asked, meeting James's gaze. "Legally? Ironclad," he said. "Notarized. 2 witnesses. Predates the document your family presented. And that video you found? It makes this untouchable." That afternoon, Emily stood at the edge of the Harper Estates driveway, watching James and 2 associates, both in crisp suits, exuding quiet confidence, march toward the house. Margaret answered the door in a pressed linen pantsuit, her smile faltering when she saw the thick envelope in James's hand. Emily followed, her steps measured, her heart steady. The drawing room was a stage. Margaret, 52, sat with her hands folded so tightly her knuckles blanched. Lauren, 30, scrolled her phone with feigned disinterest. Thomas, 55, leaned against the wall, avoiding eye contact, and their lawyer, Robert, 45, tapped his pen like he could outrun the tension. James didn't flinch. "We're here to present the original, notarized will of William Harper, signed 6 weeks prior to his passing." He laid the document on the table, the paper heavy with truth. "The version you presented was falsified." Robert stiffened. "I have the notary statement. And we have a time-stamped Witnessed document. James cut in. Calm but unyielding. Signed in person by William. Here in Raleigh. Not emailed from your client's account. He slid the handwritten note toward Margaret. Her eyes flicked to it. Then away. Her face a mask of ice. Lauren laughed. A brittle sound. So, what? She gets a garden and some old notebooks. And we're supposed to act like that's justice? Emily met her sister's gaze. Unflinching. You can pretend all you want, Lauren, but Grandpa called my name with his last breath. You didn't hear him because you weren't listening. The room went quiet. The kind of quiet that presses against your eardrums. Margaret didn't speak. For once, her silver tongue failed her. Emily stood, pulling an envelope from her bag. One more thing, she said, and left without looking back. She walked to the mailbox at the end of the drive. The envelope addressed to the Raleigh Times. Inside was a letter titled, A Family That Watched a Man Die While Pouring Wine. It didn't name names, it didn't need to. It told William's story, a man ignored in his final moments. His legacy repackaged for Instagram likes. She dropped it in the slot. The metal clank echoing like a gavel. The next morning, the article was front-page news. By noon, the estate's phone was ringing off the hook. Lauren lost her endorsement deal with a wellness brand. The company citing values misalignment in a curt statement. Robert faced a review at his firm for mishandling client documentation. His name vanished from their website by dusk. Margaret retreated into silence. Her carefully curated events cancelled. Her socialite circle whispering behind her back. Emily didn't gloat. She didn't need to. Instead, she drove to the southern parcel. A quiet stretch of land William had loved. Where wildflowers once grew in unruly bursts. She met with city planners. Signing papers to donate the land for a community garden in William's name. Weeks later, she stood at the edge of the newly fenced plot. Watching workers install a wooden sign. For those forgotten too early, W. Harper. At its center, she placed the bonsai tree William had given her at 19. When she left for college. This one's yours, he'd said, handing her the tiny clipping. I'll take care of her while you find yourself. She'll be here when you come back. She'd found it discarded by the estate's trash bins. Its roots brittle but not dead. Now, replanted, it stood proud, its leaves catching sunlight. On Saturdays, Emily began hosting workshops at the garden. Kids came, some fidgety, others shy, planting basil and mint under her guidance. Parents lingered, watching the soil come alive. The community started calling it William's Garden. Though the sign never named it so. It fit. It always would. Emily packed her things slowly. Not out of anger but with purpose. She took William's glasses, a photo from the state fair when she was 12, his journals, and the bonsai. The estate went on the market. Margaret moved to a condo downtown, hosting smaller, quieter events. Lauren fled to Charlotte, claiming she needed space. Thomas buried himself in work. None of them mentioned Emily, and she didn't expect them to. One spring afternoon, she sat under a magnolia tree at the garden's edge, the bonsai beside her. A breeze stirred the petals above. I came to say goodbye to you, she whispered to William's memory. I didn't know I'd end up saying goodbye to them, too. Her phone pinged. A text from Margaret. We need to talk. Emily set the phone face down. The silence that followed wasn't lonely. It was the sound of a house finally quiet, of a legacy reclaimed, of a woman who'd chosen truth over performance.